All right, so today we're diving into something that's been sparking some serious debate online.
Yeah, a lot of buzz around this one.
It's all about male vulnerability in relationships and whether it's a turn-on or a total turn-off.
It's a good one, and to really get into it, we're going to be taking a close look at this viral Reddit thread
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
where men are sharing their, experiences and anxieties
Anxieties, for sure.
about showing emotion to their partners. It gets pretty raw, pretty real, and it definitely sparked a lot of discussion.
It did. It seems like a lot of the debate really centers on this idea of the ick factor,
Yeah.
right? A lot of men in the thread are talking about how their partners felt less attracted or even like repulsed when they would cry or express sadness or just generally open up emotionally.
Yeah, I saw some of those comments.
There was one guy who even said he watched the light of attraction die in his ex's eyes
Wow.
after he cried in front of her after a family tragedy.
That's heavy.
It's a powerful image, and it kind of speaks to this deeper fear that a lot of men seem to have,
Right.
this idea that showing vulnerability somehow makes them less attractive or less masculine.
Makes them less of a man.
Yeah, it's like they're caught between wanting to be authentic and open, but also terrified of what might happen if they are.
For sure. And it's not even just about losing attraction, right? Some guys were saying they've basically shut down emotionally
Oh, totally.
as a way of coping.
Like a defense mechanism.
Exactly. They're so afraid of being rejected that they just avoid it altogether.
And isn't that kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Oh, absolutely. If you're constantly guarding your emotions, it's almost impossible to build real intimacy and connection.
Right, like you can't have a close relationship if you're not letting anyone in.
It's like trying to build a house on sand. It's just not going to be stable.
But then again, it's not like every woman feels that way, right?
Nope, not at all.
I mean, the thread also had women who were saying that they find emotional vulnerability attractive and even important for a relationship.
Absolutely. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation.
So what are they seeing that maybe these guys who are so scared to open up are missing?
Well, there were some women sharing stories about how they felt closer to their partners.
Interesting.
After seeing them cry or after seeing them, open up about their struggles, they see that vulnerability as strength, not a weakness.
Okay, so we've got these two seemingly opposite perspectives. How do we make sense of that?
Right.
On the one hand, you've got men feeling this pressure to be stoic and unemotional. And on the other hand, you've got women who are looking for that emotional openness and connection.
Yeah, it's almost like we're speaking two different languages.
Exactly.
And this is where that idea of performative masculinity comes in.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Society often sends men this message.
Yeah?
That they need to be tough and unemotional and totally self-reliant.
The strong silent type.
Exactly. It's a performance, a role they feel like they have to play, even if it goes against their natural instincts.
Like they're putting on a front.
Yeah, and it can be incredibly damaging. It can lead to suppressing their emotions, isolation, and disconnection from who they really are.
It's almost like they're wearing this suit of armor that's way too heavy, but they're afraid to take it off because they think people will judge them.
Right. And the sad part is that a lot of men actually buy into this limited definition of masculinity, even though it hurts them in their relationships.
They think being vulnerable will make them less of a man, when really it's the opposite.
It takes real strength to be authentic and to embrace all of your emotions, even the tough ones, to let yourself be seen, warts and all.
So where do we go from here? How do we break down these stereotypes and create space for men to be emotionally honest without fear of judgment?
That's the big question, and that's what we're going to get into in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, I am ready. Let's do it.
Going back to that idea of societal change, one thing that really stuck out to me in the Reddit thread was just how much emotional burden so many men were describing.
It's like they're being told to just bury a fundamental part of themselves.
Yeah.
And as we've been talking about, that can have some pretty serious consequences, not just for them personally, but also for their relationships.
Absolutely. It's so important to recognize that repressing emotions doesn't just make them disappear.
It's not that simple.
They often come out in unhealthy ways, like through anger, substance abuse, even physical health problems.
Wow, so it really can impact every area of life.
It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can push it down, but eventually it's going to pop back up with even more force.
And in a relationship, if you're not expressing your true feelings, how can your partner ever really get to know you?
Right, you're never letting them see the real you.
Exactly. It creates this barrier
It does.
between two people, and real intimacy needs both people to be vulnerable.
It does. It's about letting yourself be seen, flaws and all, and trusting that your partner will still love and accept you.
Okay, so then what about those women who are saying they actually appreciate emotional vulnerability in a partner?
Yeah.
What are they seeing that maybe these guys who are so scared to open up are missing?
Well, for one thing, they understand that emotional honesty is essential
Okay.
for building a strong and lasting connection. They don't see tears as weakness.
Interesting.
They see it as authenticity and courage.
So, like they're more drawn onto someone who's in touch with their feelings.
Exactly. They see it as a sign of maturity and depth.
I think there was even a woman in the thread who said she finds vulnerability in men incredibly sexy.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
It's such a different perspective.
It is. It really challenges that old school idea that men have to be emotionally closed off to be attractive.
Right, like the whole strong silent type thing.
Exactly. But in reality, a lot of women are actually more attracted to partners who are in touch with their feelings and can communicate openly and honestly.
So if vulnerability can actually make someone more attractive and build intimacy, why are so many men still struggling to express their emotions?
Well, there are a couple of things going on here. One is definitely societal conditioning. Like we've talked about, there's this pressure to conform to these rigid, outdated ideas about what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
But another big piece of the puzzle is the lack of safe spaces for men to process their emotions.
It's like society's telling them, don't cry, don't complain, just suck it up. But then where are they supposed to go with all those feelings?
Exactly. They might not have the same kind of social support networks that women often have. They might not feel comfortable talking about their feelings with their male friends because they're afraid of being judged or ridiculed,
Yeah, so they end up carrying this emotional burden all alone.
which can be incredibly isolating and overwhelming.
So what's the solution? How do we create a culture where men feel empowered to express themselves and have access to the support they need?
Well, it's a complex issue, but I think a good place to start is by challenging those harmful stereotypes about masculinity. We need to redefine strength to include emotional intelligence, empathy, vulnerability.
Okay, so like a total shift in how we view masculinity.
Exactly, and this has to happen at every level of society, in our families, schools, media, workplaces.
It's a big task.
It is.
And I think it's also important to remember that vulnerability is a two-way street.
Absolutely.
It's not just about men opening up to women. It's about creating relationships where both partners feel safe and supported to be themselves.
Yeah. A healthy relationship needs emotional reciprocity. Both partners need to be willing to be vulnerable, to listen with empathy, and to create that space where they can both be fully seen and heard.
We've talked a lot about communication, but it's not just about talking, right?
Right.
It's also about really listening to what your partner is saying and trying to understand their perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
That's so important. Active listening means paying attention to both the words and the nonverbal cues, asking clarifying questions, reflecting back what you've heard to make sure you understand. It's about showing your partner that you're present and engaged and that their thoughts and feelings matter to you.
And I think sometimes just acknowledging your partner's feelings can make a huge difference. You don't always need to have a solution or offer advice.
Right.
Sometimes just saying, hey, I hear you and I understand that this is hard for you is enough.
That validation can be so powerful. Just letting your partner know that their feelings are valid, that you're there for them.
So it sounds like we're talking about finding a balance between being authentic and expressing your emotions, but also being mindful of your partner's needs and finding healthy ways to communicate and support each other.
Exactly. And finding that balance is a continuous process. It takes self-awareness, open communication, and a willingness to be vulnerable, both individually and as a couple.
I feel like we've covered so much ground here, and our listeners are probably wondering how to actually put all of this into practice in their own lives.
Yeah. Let's dive into that.
So let's shift gears and talk about what that looks like. So we've talked about these societal pressures and the need for safe spaces and the importance of communication, but where does the average guy even start to put all this into practice?
Well, I think the first step is self-awareness, taking some time to really look at your own emotional patterns. What are your triggers? How do you usually react when you're feeling stressed or angry or sad? Do you shut down? Do you lash out? Once you understand your own emotional landscape, you can start to develop healthier ways of coping.
I guess it's like that saying, know thyself, but that's not always so easy, is it? Especially when it comes to emotions.
It definitely takes practice, and it can be uncomfortable at first, but the payoff is huge. Imagine being able to handle those tough emotions without letting them control you. Imagine feeling more confident and secure in your relationships because you know how to express yourself authentically without that fear of judgment. That's the power of emotional intelligence.
That sounds pretty amazing, but how do we actually get there? What are some tools people can use?
Journaling is a great place to start. It gives you a safe, private space to process your emotions. You can write about your triggers, your reactions, any patterns you notice. It's like having a conversation with yourself, and it can be really insightful.
I've heard people say journaling is helpful, but I've always been a little skeptical. It just seems kind of touchy-feely.
I get it. but I really encourage you to try it. Think of it as a mental workout. Just like physical exercise strengthens your body, journaling strengthens your emotional muscles. It helps you build that self-awareness process, those difficult emotions, and develop better coping strategies.
Okay, I'm willing to give it a shot. What else?
Exercise is another powerful tool. It's not just about physical fitness, it's about releasing that pent-up energy and stress. When you exercise, your brain releases endorphins, which have mood-boosting effects.
So hitting the gym can actually help you manage your emotions.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be some crazy intense workout. Even a brisk walk or a yoga class can make a difference. The key is to find something you enjoy and make it a regular part of your routine.
Okay, so journaling and exercise are on the list. What about talking to someone? I know a lot of guys who just bottle things up because they don't feel comfortable opening up to their friends or family.
That's a common struggle, and it's why it's so important to have different support systems. It could be a therapist, a trusted friend, a mentor, even a support group. The key is finding someone you feel safe talking to, someone who will listen without judgment and offer support.
It's like having a sounding board, someone who can help you sort through your thoughts and feelings without making you feel like you're burdening them.
Exactly, and don't underestimate the power of professional help. Therapists are trained to help you navigate those difficult emotions, develop coping strategies, and build healthy relationship patterns.
So we've got self-awareness, journaling, exercise, and seeking support. What else is important for building emotional intelligence?
Developing empathy. It's not just about understanding your own emotions, it's also about understanding the emotions of others. Pay attention to your partner's verbal and nonverbal cues. Are they withdrawn? Are they stressed? Are they excited? Try to see things from their perspective.
That makes sense. It's about being in tune with what your partner's feeling and understanding where they're coming from, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. But how do we actually do that?
Active listening is key. Really focus on what your partner is saying, ask clarifying questions, and reflect back what you've heard to make sure you understand. It shows them that you're present and engaged and that you value their thoughts and feelings.
And sometimes just acknowledging your partner's feelings can make a world of difference. You don't always have to have a solution or give advice. Sometimes just saying, I hear you and I understand that this is tough for you is enough.
Absolutely. It's about validation, letting your partner know that their feelings are legitimate and that you're there for them.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I think it's so important for men to be having these conversations to challenge those old stereotypes about masculinity and create a culture where vulnerability is seen as a strength, not a weakness.
I couldn't agree more, and I hope our listeners are feeling encouraged and empowered. Emotional intelligence is a skill that can be learned and developed, and the benefits are huge. Deeper connections, more fulfilling relationships, and a greater sense of well-being.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. We've covered a lot today, but I hope our listeners are walking away feeling inspired to take action.
If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe to Voices of the Soul wherever you get your podcasts, and check out Sean Apolog's YouTube channel for more thought-provoking content.
Until next time, keep those conversations going and keep diving deep into the complexities of being human.